anything with you guys.
You never stop trying though, do you?
No, I always confuse the two
It's
because
only Roger and I that go back to 1880.
Well, I believe Tim, so.
Oh, I'm wrong. I'm wrong.
Well, I'm going with Roger. He's got somebody big on his side.
Roger's much more intellectual than I am. That might not be saying much.
No.
There we go. That's right.
Gee. What'd you put in your coffee there, Mike?
All right, guys, we ready to roll? We are live. We are being recorded.
Oh dear.
Yeah. All right, let's roll. We are live. Let's go. Here. All right. Welcome, everybody. I'm glad everybody's already having a good time. Let's roll. Hold on, please. Sorry, I was getting feedback. Okay. So as I was saying, let's get started. Beginning the program here, we usually get together and we all go to a restaurant and share a meal and play reindeer games and just have a great old time at Christmas in December. We've done that for many years. And we can't do that this year, so we're going to try to make this as festive as we can. I've got my tree, I've got my lights, got my hat, so here we go. And we also have the holiday modeling contest that we have a few people who have agreed to share. So we'll do that first, and then today we have Dan Lewis, who will share his layout and do a clinic for us. We'll go ahead and do some modeling, holiday modeling in between his two presentations. And if we have any stragglers, we'll do it afterwards also, but probably will be good. And then we'll do a poll and a Zoom poll, a first for us here, and see who gets to win the holiday contest. So with no further ado, let's go to the first person who has an entry today, and that would be Tim. I'm going to spotlight you, Tim, and you have the floor, as they say, I guess. There we go. Show us your creation.
All righty. This is here, hold on a second. This is the Santa train coming into Ludlow, California. Can you see it?
No.
Only small. Can you click it?
Small pixels. How about making them big?
Huh. Okay, give me a second here. Jeez. Huh.
Just click on each picture.
Click on the picture.
Yeah.
Double click it. Yeah. It should open it.
Huh, because on my screen it's open, but
Okay.
Oh, then go back, unshare your screen, then share just your open picture.
Yeah.
oh, okay. Okay, good idea. Okay.
Wrong screen shared.
I think
Alrighty.
it's called operator error.
I know all about that.
Not quite a train wreck though.
Not quite.
There we go.
Oh,
Yay.
Is that it?
you
Yep.
did it. That was
Good.
Awesome.
Good. I'm trying to get rid of this thing. Oh, go. Okay.
Yep, we got a good view of your shot.
All righty. Santa is coming in to Ludlow, California. And okay. This thing isn't working like I thought it would work. Sorry. Here, hold on. Put that there. And
Remember, everyone has to take notes so you know how to vote.
Yeah, I know. Oh, okay.
So Tim's
see.
Santa train.
All righty. That's the Santa train. And there's another picture. Here's another pic of the Santa. Can you see that, or is that messed up?
Why don't
It
you
It hasn't
double-
changed yet.
Double click it.
No, it's the wrong screen. If you go back to your first screen, see where it says see all photos?
Hold on.
On the upper left,
Oh, okay.
See what that does. All right. So
No,
now,
no. Now you just, that didn't do it. That created a mess. Okay. I'm sorry. Can you skip
mean a
to
bigger
somebody
mess.
else?
Yes, yes.
And
I
I'll
will
figure
go-
this out.
Go to someone else. You tell us when you're ready.
Okay.
All right.
2021.
Let's see. Yeah. So Trudy, you're up.
We can try it.
Hang on a
So am I
second.
spotlighted yet?
Not yet. Sorry, I'm being slow.
I do look a lot like Tim.
There we go. Okay.
Are you sure?
There you go.
Go. You're on.
Oh, there we go. Let's see if I can figure this out. So I won an O-scale car at a raffle, and so I thought I'd do something for the museum, except for now I can't because it's not open. So anyway, I went ahead, I built a little sleigh and put good train stuff in it and Christmas trees. But I couldn't stage it at where I wanted to on the layout since the layout's closed. So all I did was, this is just cardboard from a tiki rum sort of cardboard. I think it's a drink mixer. Anyway, so I just made a little sleigh and filled it with wonderful train things. I'm a little concerned about the size. I think it may be Garden Railroad.
We don't
Are you-
see the picture.
Did you share? I don't think
I
you shared.
did. You're not seeing it?
No?
No.
Oh dear, let me see if I can go back. Zoom, I said, share screen. I'm clicking on shared screen and it's not doing diddly jack. Share screen, that one.
Oops, something happened.
Yeah,
Did it finally?
There it is.
All right.
All right, so there's the little Santa sleigh. What he's doing is he's helping Santa through the desert. There are no houses there. And he's tired, so he's getting a little break. And the train is taking Santa's sleigh with all the goodies in it, and the Christmas trees and stuff. And there's my little, it's not very fancy. It's just made out of old cardboard.
Cool. That turned out good.
That's my little Santa's sleigh, or the helper, helping poor Santa get through the desert so he can get a little sleep while there's no houses anywhere. All right, back to Zoom.
Are you done?
Yes,
Got it.
can't find my Zoom screen again.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, I have to tab through because it doesn't come up when I click on it. I have to tab through.
How you doing, Tim? Or do you need more time?
I need more time. Sorry.
All right. So I'm gonna go. Maybe we'll do you in the middle.
Okay, that's better.
Okay. Hold on a second here. I seem to be operating slow today. Okay, there we go.
There's Tim again.
All righty.
Oh, there we go.
Okay, so now I'm looking for Mike. You ready?
I'm ready.
All right, Mike, show us your stuff.
All right. While I was ready, let's see.
No, one of us can get this smoothly.
I have my picture.
You lose your picture, Mike?
Well, my picture is, I tried it before and it worked, and now I don't see my picture. Okay, how does that work? Okay, here, let me do something here. 1 second here.
I've got it. I got it here as a backup if you need.
Uh,
You caught the Kim foot disease.
Yeah.
I
Tim's got us on a
know.
roll, man.
What happened? Well, I wonder if
It's hard to believe Jack with no video is the one who just said that.
okay, let me do it. Okay, let me do it this way. It was working better before, but
Okay.
can you see that or no?
Very little.
Okay.
You can see it?
Tiny.
Tiny.
It's tiny?
Just like
Tiny.
it looks just like Tim's.
Oh man. Okay, let me stop sharing the screen.
Mike,
That's
I
the
have
directory listing.
Mike, I have your picture ready to roll.
Yeah, if you do it, it'd be great.
Here it is.
Okay. So here's my holiday scene. And I thought I would tell everybody about it. It took me about 20 minutes to put the lights on there. I had to unravel the lights. And I had to be careful not to knock over the locomotives because these are on there's no railing to keep the locomotives from going off the track there. I used 4 push pins. And
Not even LEDs.
and I took 26 photos to get the one photo that I liked. And then I had to transfer my photos from my iPhone to my computer and then organize it and find the photo. So it took a lot of work. That's it.
In the process, he sent me a copy, so we were lucky we got to see it.
Oh yeah, lucky.
All right. Thank you, Mike. All
Gonna be
right.
hard to beat that.
It's gonna be. All right, folks. Happy holidays, man. All right. So let's move forward. Layout tour by Dan Lewis. Go ahead and take it, Dan, and you can tell us a little about yourself too before you start. You are up.
Okay, very good.
Thank you.
I am a long ways to the east of you, but I get to San Diego periodically. There's a few of you I've met. Of course, I've known Roger for many, many years, actually. But I've been to Don Fowler's layout a time or two, and there's probably 1 or 2 others there as well. I live in a suburb of Detroit, but I model Central Montana. So I'm going to go to screen share and let's do a little tour of my layout here in Michigan. All right, everybody see that?
Yeah.
We good? Okay, I model a long branch, well over 200 miles long, actually. So for a branch line, that's pretty long, of the Milwaukee Road in central Montana in the early 1950s, 1953 to be exact. I model in N scale. I started out in HO way back in the early 1970s, I guess, but I switched to N scale because I just didn't have space, and I've just stuck with it ever since. So this is the area that I model. The line that I model starts at Harleton, Montana, and it goes up this direction to Lewistown, almost north, not quite as straight as it looks on this map. And then it wanders its way northwesterly to Great Falls, and then finally goes up to a place called Agawam, which is, and all of this is in the grain belt of Montana. So I wouldn't say a strictly prototype modeler, but reasonably close. So this is what the layout looks like. If you would look at it from a top view, this is a model railroader illustration, which was a few years back. There's a duck under right here where it says entry. And I have 2 big grab irons. These are genuine grab irons. They were actually bent for me by the shops at the Tuscola and Saginaw Bay Railroad, which is a short line here in Michigan. but I was a friend with the owner, and he bent me a couple of grab irons, so I use them on the door post. And even though it's a bit of a duck under, it's not real low, and by a grab iron you can get under really easily. So the layout is 18 by 25 feet. It's single deck. I don't do double deck stuff. It is cantilevered from the walls. Several different kinds of track depending on where it is. And the main line is about 115 feet long. And for control, I use Easy DCC, which is, I guess, CVP. I should say also that at any point in this, if anybody has questions that they would like to ask or that occur to them, you can feel free to just interrupt me and butt in. Or if you have them at the end, that'd be fine too.
Hey, Dan, I have a question. Since you're talking about the feet of the main line,
yeah,
do you have an estimated total amount of scale miles on your railroad?
I did that once, and I'm trying to remember what it was. It's been a while back. I did measure it out. It seemed like it was around 3 scale miles.
Okay.
So I'm crowding 200 miles into 3.
Nice.
So there's not a huge amount of distance between towns. There's enough distance so that when we're operating, I don't have an engine in one town and the caboose in another. There's enough space between the towns so that there's separation, but there's not a really long run between the towns. All right, nice. This is kind of what it looks like when you first duck under. The height, the lowest height is about 50 inches, and it goes up 3 or 4 inches higher than that. There are 2% grades, and then some 1% grades as well. When I originally started building this, we were still doing direct current, so I had all of these blocks, and I left all of the block controls in and just rerouted them to my digital system. And that makes it really easy to troubleshoot. I can almost every 3 or 4 or 5 foot section has a toggle switch. So if I need to troubleshoot it, it makes it pretty easy to do that. I've kept the aisles pretty wide. So the aisles are 4 to 5 feet in most places. The only place that's narrower than that is when you go around this peninsula to the other side. It's about 3 feet just in the pinch point there, but everything else is wider than that. And because I have a yard on the left and a yard on the right, that means that in operations, I'm often having guys standing butt to butt, basically. So some of them need more space than others, which works anyway. So up on the right, there is Great Falls. I'll say a little bit more about Great Falls a little later, but it has the iconic station, which is in Great Falls. And then on the left, I have open staging. So I don't do any under the layout staging. Everything is up on top. I really, personally at least, dislike trying to weasel my way under the layout to try and get to staging kinds of things. So as you go around the peninsula, you get into the other half of the area. And then on the left will be Harleton, which is the southernmost town on the branch line. And that's the town where the railroad connects, the branch line connects to the main line, the trunk line. And then on the right side is a town called Lewistown. Incidentally, not named after me. There is a real Lewistown, and it's named after Meriwether Lewis from the Lewis and Clark expedition. I don't think there's any relationship between us, not that I know of anyway. I tend to keep everything pretty clean, so I don't have all my stuff stored underneath it. Find other places for that. Just tend to like a clean, kind of a clean looking layout room. Now turning around and looking back the other way on the same side, this is the rest of Lewistown up here on the upper left. And then this would be Harleton, or my version of Harleton on the right. And then the line works its way back over some bridges and a big trestle and gets back to the other side. And then this is the other side if you were getting ready to leave the layout. So this is the entryway, and you can't really see the grab irons. They're kind of blocked from view, but there's one right here on this side of the door, and then there's one just on the other side of the door. So people getting into the layout can just grab that and just kind of swing under. It's really pretty simple. The only difficulty is if I have a handicapped person, I have a rolling chair, so they can sit in it and roll under without even ducking. So that works for them, but I don't have too many like that. So that's kind of the basic things of the way the layout's situated. And so then what I'm going to do is I'm going to take you through each section of the layout, starting with the staging. This is open staging. I've got 8 staging tracks for the Milwaukee and 3 for the Great Northern. One of the, for me at least, nice things about this prototype line to model is that there was some common trackage between the Milwaukee and the Great Northern. So I modeled that common trackage, and there are 2 junctions, one where the Great Northern comes into the Milwaukee and the other where the Great Northern leaves the Milwaukee. And so each of them have Great Northern staging at each end. The open staging actually represents both ends of the layout. So we never go all the way through, but if you're in this staging and you're coming down following my cursor this way, you are headed northward on the North Montana line. And if you come into it on the other end, you are at the farthest northern end of the layout. So these are just some pictures of the area of staging. This is a stock train, and I have a prototype picture here, which is actually, this is a light Mikado, and the one I have in the model is a heavy Mikado, but they're fairly similar. But one of the great privileges I had was researching this line. I went to Montana, and I spent a number of days tracking over this stuff. I had a little write-up by one of the professors at Eastern Montana State University, where you could actually find all of this stuff on unmarked roads. And so I tracked it down, and I managed to meet the 2 hoggers that are in these 2 engines. They were in their late 80s, and I interviewed them both. They told me where I could find a few other people that went back to the steam period. And so I interviewed 6 or 8 people, all of them well up in years. In fact, the 2 hoggers, Bob Spring, one of them, and Red Hanley is the other, both of them died within 6 months of when I interviewed them. So I felt pretty privileged actually to be able to talk to these guys. This is a kind of a sunrise shot. I did build some antelope. I took some Pricer N-scale deer, cut off their antlers, cut off their tail, rebuilt the antlers out of 6/1000 wire, and went down to a taxidermy shop, I think it was a Bass Pro Shop, which is a big hunting, fishing kind of place, where they had some stuffed antelope so I could get the color right. And took some pictures of their antelope and painted them up. And then I don't know if you use Pricer stuff, but Pricer makes a lot of milk cows, but nobody seems to make steers and bulls. And since I'm modeling Montana, I need beef cattle. I'm not in Wisconsin milking these things. They're out on the range. So all of these cattle have had gender change surgery, and they've now become white-faced cattle instead of Holstein milkers. This is one of the mills that's just outside Harleton. And I've got a prototype picture of the mill that I took when I was doing my own research there. In building this, I did not get it proportioned just right. It's actually should have been taller than that. But on the other hand, it works pretty good. It's been there since the early 1900s. Now coming to around the peninsula here, we come to this side of the layout, and this comes into Harleton. So you can get a kind of a view of Harleton. There is the Harleton Station, which is on the National Registry. It's still there. You can go see it. There's part of the engine house, which actually is a roundhouse. I don't have room for the roundhouse, but I have room for at least a good bit of the town. So one of the things that I also am able to do is I'm able to run electrics because Harleton was the division point for the electrified division that ran all the way to Avery, Idaho. So in and around Harleton, things are under wire. So I don't run a lot of electrics. I just run them from staging into Harleton. And in op sessions, we bring an electric into Harleton, then we have to change power to going up the line. But at least I can use these little Joes, which were originally built for the Russians. And then in the Cold War, the government wouldn't let them ship stuff to Russia. So the Milwaukee Road bought a bunch of them. And in honor of Joseph Stalin, I don't know if that's an honor or not, but he was a mass murderer. But anyway, they called them Little Joes. So these engines got that nickname. This is the Harleton Station. It's built out of wood and paper for the most part. And there's my antelope up on the hill. And then there's a prototype picture of the station as well. When I was photographing this station, there actually was a little herd of antelope on this bluff. So it was kind of cool to be able to include them in my layout. This is at the Harleton Station. We're changing power. There's a box cab. So this is as far as the box cab can run. And so it's going to change over to some other kind of power, in this case, a consolidation for traveling up the line. Harleton itself is fairly narrow. It's only about 18 inches deep. So can't really model the town very much. I stacked it up to give it a little more feeling of fullness. But for the most part, all of these buildings, some are scratch built, some are kit bash, but basically it doesn't look quite like the real Harleton. The engines, on the other hand, these F units, those are very common on this line. So I have those numbered correctly for what was on the line in the 1950s. One of the guys I met was the roundhouse foreman at Harleton during the steam to diesel transition. There's a little museum in Harleton called the Muscle Shell Museum. And I'd been up there poking around and seeing what data they might have had. And that night at the hotel, I got a knock on the door, and there's this little guy out there with a railroad hat on, and he says, "Are you the guy that's looking at the Milwaukee Road?" Small towns like Harleton, you know, you don't need a newspaper. I mean, just everybody knows what's happening. So I said, yeah, I'm the guy. He says, "Well, you need to talk to me because I was the roundhouse foreman during the steam to diesel transition." So I spent the evening with him and his wife. Actually, they had a home in Harleton, and they gave me all kinds of good prototype information. This actually was one of the calendar shots for 2020 NMRA calendar. I can't remember which month it was in. I think June or July or somewhere along there, I suppose. So they use these SW1200s for switching units at that period of time, along with some early steam consolidations and even some smaller ones than that for switching. So now I'll switch down to the area, it's called Judith Gap. Judith Gap kind of goes between a couple of little mountain ranges and swings around through here, goes across a 7-span bridge. And so this is kind of in this area, a bunch of furnace filter trees, which I'm sure you've all built dozens of them. I think I have several hundred on my layout. Yeah, keep the furnace filter people happy because I keep buying filters from them faster than would normally need them for a furnace. And unlike San Diego, we actually need a furnace in Michigan. We've already had a couple of small snows. So today it's raining, but I like rain better than snow because you don't have to shovel rain. This is swinging down through the gap. All the mountains and stuff are painted on the backdrop. And this is a prototype photo I took of this bridge. When I was there, and I was there doing research when I took this picture, was in the 1990s. The Milwaukee Road was no longer there, but it followed what is now just a farm road. That's the old road bed of the Milwaukee Road. And the bridge over the top is the Great Northern. So they crossed each other at this point. So that's one area I tried to duplicate on my layout. And then coming across the bridge, here's a Great Northern train coming into Judith Gap. And that is shortly beyond Judith Gap is where there is one of the junctions where the Great Northern then runs on Milwaukee trackage. The Milwaukee timetable prevails, but Great Northern trains could run on it in timetable train order operation. And now we'll move around to the Lewistown area. This is one of the major towns, and in fact, it is the only town that had a division headquarters on the Milwaukee Road that was not on the main line. The Rocky Mountain District had their headquarters in this station, the Lewistown station, and it was not on the main line. So that's a bit of a difference than most of the headquarters, division headquarters on the Milwaukee. I'll say more about this building when we do the clinic a little bit later. Most of these structures are, well, some of them are kit bashed and some are scratch built. I guess I'll say it kind of that way. The station is scratch built. It's built out of styrene and then covered with brick paper. This is back, I don't know if you've used the Paper Creek brick paper. They don't make it anymore, unfortunately. Although I still have a package left, so I'm still good for at least one more building using brick paper. But it makes a really safety for N scale, a very nice brick. And that station is in fact still there. This is a shot I took in a mirror in the middle of the yard. It's really hard to get a camera in the middle of a yard, especially when the camera is about 5 times the size of a locomotive. You can't get down very, very low to get a good angle. So I shot this in a front surface mirror so I could get a viewpoint that looked kind of like you were in the yard. This odd looking locomotive here is one of 2 that were built by the Milwaukee Road in their shops back in Milwaukee, but one of them ran on this line in Montana for about half a dozen years, and fortunately right in the period where I'm modeling. So not real happy with it. I built it on a PA1 chassis, which is about 6 feet too short, and I didn't get the compound curves on the nose quite right. You can look at the prototype, it's a lot more squarish than I have it, but it's probably as good as it's gonna get anyway. A lot of cattle in Montana. In fact, as I understand it, even today, there's about 6 cows for every human being in Montana. So I've got a number of stock corrals. I use Z-scale cattle to make yearlings. These are N-scale cattle, and then I use Z-scale to make yearlings, and that works pretty good. This coaling tower actually is modeled after one built originally by George Celios out in Boston. I had some pictures of his model, and I built several models after him. He doesn't model in N-scale, of course, he models in HO. But he gave me permission to build some of these after the structures that he originally built, and that's one of them. So we move down here to the curvature in what is called Hanover. I had one construction photo, I think from 1912, when they're building this big steel trestle, and I have a version of that trestle here in the back. You can see just a little bit. This is kind of a night shot at a mine. not too much to say about it, except it's at night. This is a kit, actually. Makes a good rock crushing facility. And this is the area around the back where we have a trestle. I have a steel bridge and then a wooden trestle. Now they do not run side by side on the prototype. They're actually about 50 miles from each other, but there's another branch line that comes off of the main branch line, and I've bent it around the back. So this is actually on a secondary branch, and it was a steel trestle called let me see, what kind of Indian Creek trestle. And then this is called the Spring Creek trestle, which I'll show you a larger picture of in a moment, which is this one. This one was just in Model Railroader about, I don't know, 5 or 6 months ago, a construction article on this trestle. You might have seen it. I shortened it because the original trestle in the prototype was over 1,300 feet long. So it was a long trestle. I shortened it to, I don't know, I think around 800 feet, something like that. And it did have 2 steel sections like this. I only modeled one of the steel sections, but that was sort of the Milwaukee's way of having a fire break. So it's too long to put it barrels of water, like you see on old trestles. But I guess the idea is if one section of the trestle caught on fire, it wouldn't burn past the steel section. So they had 2 steel sections in the middle of this trestle. This is a grain elevator. Just a really interesting set of roof lines, which I found fascinating to build. And this is one of the smaller stations. There was probably a dozen or 15 stations just like this on that branch line, all built exactly the same. Shingles on the gable, clapboard, and then a shingle roof. So they all look kind of like that. And then we come down to the last part, which is Great Falls, which I've actually been working on during COVID-19. And just, I don't know, maybe 2 or 3 weeks ago, I finally finished this section. It's been needing attention for several years, actually. We've been operating for, I don't know, 15 years with this section unfinished. But I finally got around to finishing it, and largely due to COVID-19, because I couldn't go anywhere, I couldn't travel, I couldn't do anything, so I'm home, so I'm building stuff. Going into it, I decided to do a winter scene. This one actually appeared in the NMRA calendar, I don't know, 2 or 3 years ago. And I thought they need a winter scene because I have they have December, so they ought to have something with snow in it for December. And so I don't have a snow scene, but I created one using baking powder. I do not recommend this method. This is to be avoided if possible at all costs. It took 3 days to clean this stuff up. I ruined an entire vacuum cleaner. It just creeps into everywhere and you can't get it up. It made a really good snow scene, but it's not something you want to try. So be forewarned. This is a crushed stone facility and another Mikado with steam, which is photoshopped in and so on. And then this is the lower level of Great Falls, the yard. Now the yard in Great Falls was 5 miles out of town. So I don't have the space to have a yard 5 miles out of town. So this is going to have to serve for the yard. Plus, I'm going to put the passenger station in the yard rather than in the city. What actually happened is passenger train would come into this yard, and then it would back up 5 miles into the city to get to the station. So I don't really do that kind of a movement, but I do have a freight station and I do have a passenger station that are built after the prototypes. This is more of this Paper Creek brickwork kind of thing. And this is coming in toward the station. This big thing on the right is part of the station. And I'll show you a larger picture of that in a moment. This is the big station. That tower, incidentally, is 130 feet high. And it is an icon in the city of Great Falls. There you can see it from almost anywhere in town. It just sticks up there, and it's no longer used, however, as a train station because they don't have any trains anymore. I think it has a law office in it, McDonald's, and some other kinds of shops. So that brings us then to the very end where I'm going into staging again. This is coming around through a place called Shoto, which is the last place that I have before going back into staging. And it includes a little cute filling station. And it also has an elevator. And it has another one of those standard stations. And that brings me to the end of the virtual tour. And I think I'm about right on the money for 30 minutes. So if you have any questions, I saw there were some questions that were written, and I will see if there's any I need to answer.
Dan, that was absolutely amazing. Absolutely beautiful. Thank you so much.
Yeah, you're welcome. I see there's one comment on the bottom, shooting with a mirror. I recommend a front surface mirror. A front surface mirror is a mirror in which the mirroring is on the outside, not the backside of the glass. Because if you're shooting into a glass that is, I don't know, say an eighth of an inch thick or a quarter of an inch thick, you're going to get a bit of the light bends when it goes through the glass, so it doesn't give you a true image. But you can get front surface mirrors from anybody that sells stuff to scientists because they use them for measuring light beams and so on. If you're familiar with Edmund Scientific, which is a major supplier of scientific kind of articles, you can get a front surface mirror from someplace like that. I'm sure there'll be someplace in San Diego that would have one if you're interested in that sort of thing.
That's fantastic.
Dan, I have a question. Have you started the MMR process?
Oh, yeah, I finished that sometime back in the 1990s. I'm MMR 268.
Oh, okay. I didn't see it on your name. I was going to say, if you aren't, you should be.
Yeah, I did that early on. I did 8 of the categories. I've got 3 more actually that are almost done, and that would be the full 11, but I seem to be postponing that. For one thing, I still have to scratch build a locomotive, which in N scale is more of a challenge than probably any of the other projects I've done. So
ask Don Fowler about that. He has some good advice on scratch building locomotives. What suburb are you in of Detroit?
I live in Rochester Hills.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Yeah.
I know I have a lot of friends back there.
Okay, sure. Yeah.
Dan, one of the things I really appreciated about your presentation was that we got to see what it looks like walking into it in the beginning, instead of just all close-ups. The close-ups are good because then you get the feel of but it was really nice to see what, all the surrounding area looks like. So that was very helpful. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Trudy. I didn't actually have those pictures there when I first thought about doing this virtual tour. I just pulled a bunch of photos that I had, and I thought, if this is a tour, when you're on a tour, you actually get to see the fascia and so on. And so maybe I should shoot a few of those.
And for those of us building, it's really helpful.
Yeah.
Because, you're not just saying, this is the great, wonderful thing you can end up with. It's like, actually, here's what it looks like, from the ground up, except yours is way cleaner than most of ours. Very neat.
Well, I cleaned it up before I took the pictures. How's that?
There was a question earlier about the backdrop. Tell them about that.
Okay, the backdrop has coved corners. So the backdrop is largely just drywall. But in the corners, I left about a 2.5 foot section of each corner without drywall. and then curved a hardboard into a curve, and then basically taped and plastered it just like you would normal sheetrock. But the middle of the curve is floating. And that was at least my idea. And so far it's worked. It's been there for 15 years because the middle is floating and is not attached. The seams don't crack because it always has room to expand and contract with that curvature. And so the corners are coved, and then everything is just painted a nice sky blue. And then I used a tempera paint, not acrylics actually. I use a tempera paint to paint the backgrounds, mostly because tempera paint is very flat when it dries, whereas acrylic has a bit of sheen. If you use acrylics, you may want to put a final coat of some kind of top coat that is dull, because you don't want light bouncing back from your backdrop.
Okay, Dan, we have some more questions. When you weather, do you use paint, chalk, or powders, or how do you do that?
All of the above. I use alcohol ink mixture. I use polyscale thinned with alcohol and mixed to whatever tones I want. I use chalks. I use Prismacolor markers. I get chalk from, there's a company in England I get it from, and there's also one here in the US, powdered chalk. So I use pastels. I recommend soft pastels rather than hard pastels. If you're into artist materials, there's a difference between them, but soft pastels I think are better for weathering than hard pastels. And you get a better range of natural colors in soft pastels than you do in hard pastels.
Are you going to say anything about op sessions? I noticed a couple of clipboards hanging from the fascia.
Yeah, we use, I belong to a round robin ops group. So we have N scale, HO scale, S scale, and O scale all in the group. I use switch lists. So one of our guys has created a computer program that will generate switch lists for your layout. And so that's what I use rather than the more familiar four card or four waybill kind of things that are probably more widely used. I've used the four waybill kind of things and they work well, but I just like the idea of switch lists because that's a little more like what you would actually have on a railroad like that. So it's that's what we use. And we also have a place for train registration. You need to register your trains when you come into a town, so the next train coming in knows who's been there and where they are on the line. And we also forbid anybody to use the callbacks unless you are at a call box or a station. So you can't just be out somewhere in the main line and yell. You have to actually have a call box to actually call the dispatcher. You might have seen some big OS signs, big red OS signs. That's to remind my operators that they need to OS when they go to a town, because I don't have an operator to do it for them.
And then how many op sessions do you have a year approximately?
Well, that varies. In the last year, none. We've been locked down. So, Michigan's governor, I think, is probably a twin sister of California's governor. I mean, they do a lot of the same things the same way. So whether that's good or bad, anyway, they're on the same track. So we haven't done anything, but usually I run about 4 to 5 a year. Sometimes it's more than that, sometimes it's less, but that's an average because I'm operating with other guys as well. And so we rotate between the layouts.
And then there's some questions about Photoshop. For instance, how do you put the smoke in for your steam engine or your steam locomotive? And then also, let's see, some of the photos, James said, some of the photos look like they had foregrounds added in Photoshop. Is that correct?
Yes. Well, there's two. Let me start with foregrounds. There's two ways I do foregrounds. Some is I Photoshop some of them in, and some of them I use a false foreground by creating a foreground on a flat board and then attaching it to the edge of the layout with some props under it, so that I sort of create a temporary foreground. So I'm not sure which pictures he might have been referring to, but one of those two ways. In smoke, I use real smoke. Just go online and Google locomotive smoke. You'll get all kinds of smoke. Then what you do, if you're familiar with Photoshop, you create a layer on Photoshop. So you put your smoke on the layer. That way you're not damaging the background photo when you're working in Photoshop. And then you use your eraser key. There's a tool called an eraser, and you can judge how much opacity you want. So 100% is I mean, it just, if you hit that one, it disappears. But it goes all the way down to, you can go down to 5%. So you can gradually lighten that smoke, get rid of any external things around the smoke in the photo that you don't want, erase all of that, and you can make it as thin as you want to, so that the background of your modeling actually shows through the smoke. So that's basically the way I do it.
Dan, what was your background?
Well, I started college as a training for commercial art. I was an animal illustrator, and I was illustrating for Pennsylvania Fish and Game and Children's Digest and some other kinds of things. And then after I did about I went through 3 years actually of art school, and then rerouted entirely and went to theological school. So that's one thing Roger and I have in common, is we're both clergymen. So then I became a biblical scholar, and I finished my grad work and all that kind of stuff. And I taught for a number of years in colleges and universities, and then became a double-hatted guy. I became a pastor as well as a professor. So most of my career, I've worn two hats. And then about 5 years ago, I'm retired from both, other than that I still do quite a bit of lectures in ancient Near Eastern history and biblical studies. So that's kind of my background.
So Dan, a question. Are you single? Oh, wait, Ryan, is that inappropriate?
No, I am not single. My wife and I just celebrated our 50th wedding anniversary in July. We have 3 children.
Judy.
Yeah, does your wife like San Diego?
Person.
Sorry about that, Dan.
I did not take her to a railroad site for our 50th anniversary. But I did take her on an Amtrak trip to the West Coast.
All right.
Hey, Dan, I have a question. Oh, well, first of all, your layout is just fantastic, and it's so nice. I don't think I've seen a layout where it's so clean, underneath the layout. But I guess my question is, I like your fascia's vertically tall.
Yeah.
And that's really nice. I haven't seen that too often. And how did you come up with that? Or?
Well, the layout is cantilevered from the walls. So to do that,
what is that?
Cantilevering is basically, it doesn't have any legs. Okay.
Oh, okay.
Okay, so to do that, I built these large triangular braces to hold the layout, but I wanted the fascia to be deep enough so those braces would be invisible. So that's essentially why I have them quite as tall as they are.
And then it's easy to sweep the floor because there's no
legs.
legs.
Wow. And it's also pretty, if you go down to your local car mechanic, you can get these little things that roll, but they only sit about a foot off the floor, but they have wheels, so they can get under cars and stuff. I have one of those, and that's what I do. I just roll around on that thing in the layout, and it's just right. I can duck under and get up into my wiring and all my stuff from underneath while I'm sitting on this little trolley.
Yeah, they work really well. That's what we use at the museum, at the San Diego Model Railroad Museum at Balboa Park. Yeah, they're just these little, yeah, and you lay on your back and you can
Yep.
work under it or do wiring, and they're great.
And a few years ago, when we started using suitcase connectors instead of solder, boy, that was a game changer. I mean, anybody that's laid on their back and trying to solder over their head, with
Yep.
stuff dropping on your nose, you know, that's miserable. But
Yeah.
suitcase connectors were a great improvement.
Dan, what technique do you use for painting your buildings?
Well, I use, back in the day when we had them, I used flow quills as well as polyscale acrylics. And if it's wood, I use stain. Sometimes just Minwax stain or create my own stains. So that's what I use for paint, but almost nothing is allowed to exist with just paint. I'm going to do some amount of weathering on even a relatively new building. May not be much, but it'll be enough to take a little bit of the newness out of it. I don't want anything to look like it was built last week. Maybe last year, but not last week. So everything is weathered to some degree, and I use quite a lot of alcohol with India ink solution, like a pint of rubbing alcohol with a teaspoon of India ink in it. That will usually cut the sheen on paint schemes, so it doesn't look so new.
So you paint your, like on a plastic building, you would paint acrylic right on the plastic?
Yes, I do, but I also airbrush, and so sometimes I'm airbrushing acrylic as well. Depending on the situation, I might actually put some kind of a light dull coat on it before I put the acrylic on it, just to give it more tooth. But I've not really had a lot of problem with it peeling off or anything like that.
Dan, tell them how you created that scene that's behind you.
Oh, well, that's just photoshopped. Yeah, I took a picture from the internet of a cafe, and blocked out all the stuff I didn't want, and then set it in front of my layout, so it looks like I'm sitting in a breakfast cafe looking at the yard.
That's fantastic. Hey, I have a question for you. What era? You might have said this, but what era is your layout, or do you have an era?
I do. 1953 September, late September. I want the aspens to have started to turn. So I have some aspens. So that means they're turning yellow. I don't, however, want snow scenes other than that one I created temporarily. And 1953 was the last year that steam and diesel ran side by side on this branch. And I'm running both steam and diesel side by side, and the correct numbers for all of those motors.
Wow. And then can I ask you one other question? Do you use DCC in sound, or I don't remember. And then what? And okay, and then what kind of cabs do you use?
Okay, I use Easy DCC. When I switched to DCC from DC, which was, I don't know, 15 years ago or whatever, what was attractive to me was the word easy. There's a number of good DCC manufacturers, and they all, so far as I know, do a great job. And I operate with a number of them on other people's layouts. But for me, I don't consider myself to be a computer wizard, and electronics is probably down near the bottom of my skill sets. So I wanted something that wasn't too difficult, and that's why I ended up with Easy DCC. As far as the cabs, I use the, let's see, what are they called? There's a number, RF 800s or RF 600s, something like that. They're basically rotary knob. They're not the digital readout kind. And I like those better personally. They feel good in your hand. They're not too clunky. If you're an NCE guy and you have these big big cabs, you know, those are bigger than I'm personally comfortable with. I want something a little smaller.
Very nice.
Okay, I'm going to go ahead and move us forward. Thank you so much, Dan. We got a little more to do in our program today, including bringing Dan back. So I had a couple questions. I want to know, Tim, how are you doing? You ready to share your Christmas train? I'm set up to help.
I'm ready.
You ready? Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So you have Tim, and then we have Rudy. Bob Graves, you there?
Yes, I am. Yeah.
Are you prepared?
I did pull one up. Yeah.
Okay. So I'll do Tim, and then Rudy, and then Bob. All right. Let me just. Oh goodness. Hold on here. All right. So Tim.
Yeah.
There we go. It's your turn.
Oh.
There we go.
Okay. There we go. All right. I've got some annoying stuff at the top there I can't get rid of. But does that look correct?
That looks great. We can't see the annoying stuff.
Oh, okay, good. I can see it, but you can't. Okay. Okay. So I apologize for messing up. In the future, I'm always going to use PowerPoint. Here, Santa has a circus train this season. And here's the circus train coming into Ludlow. And then here's another pic of he's got his elves and everything, and coming in, and let's see. Oh no, okay. There's a rhino. There happens to be a rhino in a circus, and the rhino protesters have shown up. So that creates problems. And oh, look at that. Look at the front of the engine there. There's the rhino up in the front. What's going on up there? Let's see what that's all about. Oh no, they stopped the entire engine. Well, so much for Santa's circus train this year. And that's it. Thanks.
Thank you, Tim. Ho, ho, ho. All right. And now, Rudy.
All right, let's see what I can do here.
Let's see what you can do following that.
Yeah, I want to know where Tim buys his weed. That's the main thing I want to know. But let me give you, I want to give you a little bit of where I got the idea for what I did. In September of 2019, I went to the 39th Annual National Narrow Gauge Convention in Sacramento. And I had the pleasure to go to Steve and Carol Rediker's house to see their layout, which was the Hetch Hetchy Railroad and the Sierra Railroad. And it was in ON 30. Pete might be interested to know it was all dead rail. But what I found most interesting was the layout was all in black and white using prototype photos for background. And then he put the foreground running into those photos to create the look, but everything was black and white. And as he said in 1919, which was when he was modeling, or the era that he was modeling, there were no color photos. And I was just very impressed with that concept. And so now let's see if we can get to my photos. So when I decided to do a winter snow contest, I decided to use his idea, his concept, to create winter in Marble, Colorado. I modeled the Crystal River Valley in Colorado. Hold on here, come on. There we go. And so I used prototype photos on foam core to create the buildings and the backdrops. I took trees and bushes and painted them black and gray. and put them on the scene to give a little more 3D effect to this. And so this is just a picture so you can get an idea of what it looks like. Let me get this minimized here. It's not minimizing. There we go. Okay. So this is my entry, Marble, winter in Marble, Colorado. And there you have it.
All right.
Rudy, that's a great
Awesome.
idea. I never heard of black and white layout.
That is nice.
That's fantastic.
Yeah, I was, and just so you know that if I can do this, this is it. So this is what it looks like.
Cool.
Very simple.
Very nice.
Yeah. Thank you, Rudy. Awesome. Are you ready, Bob?
There's the Bob.
Unmuting here. Okay. I'm in the in San Diego, in the San Diego S-Gagers Model Railroad Club, as well as NMRA. And every year, set up around the Christmas tree. And let's see, I've never done screen sharing before.
Uh-oh.
Let's see what happened. Here we go.
Look
There.
at that. First try.
That up. Yay.
You see that?
Okay, how
See
about that?
Mike? Okay.
All right.
Okay. What do we got now? With the Christmas train made by Lionel American Flyer, and the ceramic houses, and I got a whole series of them around the tree that I've shot. Lovely scene we put up every year.
Fun.
That's beautiful.
Thank you.
There you go.
All right.
Wow.
There we go. All
Good
right.
job. You've never done this before, huh?
Thank you. Nope.
Nicely done.
First try.
Nicely
It's easy,
done.
I guess.
Yeah.
Must
All
be.
Right.
All right. Let's see. So we've had Tim and Rudy and Trudy and Mike. Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and share something too, and then we're going to give it back to Dan for his clinic up just about roofs, just roofs. So, oops, let me see here. See if I can do this or not, huh? Look at me go. All right.
Did you want to climb up here?
All right. So with COVID and all, Frank Baker from Arizona did a clinic on building a craftsman building, which I participated in. So then I took his craftsman building that I built in his clinic and winterized it. So we have Railway Express Agency with packages. Dun, da, da, da. So there we go.
Very nice.
So that worked out good, huh, Trudy?
I like
All right.
it.
All right, thank you.
Very snowy, the trees, everything. Really
Yeah,
nice.
she's all, you gonna do that? Oh, I don't know, maybe. Okay, so here we are. All right, very good. So we'll go ahead then. So those are all of our entries for the holiday model show and tell. So at the end of the clinic, after Dan is finished, we will go ahead and do a Zoom poll. So you guys can vote on your favorite winter modeling scenes.
Ryan,
Think about what you want to do. Yes.
real quick, what do you use to winterize? What were they?
What did I-
Products or baking soda?
No, I didn't use baking soda. Dan would be glad to know. I happen to have a bottle of Woodland Scenic Snow. So I just pulled apart a tree and sprayed it with some hairspray and sprinkled snow and plopped them on there and sprinkled more of it on there. I didn't really want to put glue on that roof. So there would have been more snow, I think, on the roof. But I like how that roof turned out, and I wasn't sure whether I wanted to keep it as a snow scene. So I didn't put any glue on the roof, but I just
But
sprinkled
Ryan,
land.
right, there's no snow on the roof because there's heat in the house. It's melted off.
That's what happened, exactly.
Well, I'm from Vermont. I can tell you, there's
All
no,
right.
on the roof, there's no snow.
Well, you did have a pretty hardy fellow there in the snow. He had short sleeve shirt.
You had to notice that. You had to. I was saying to myself, I should paint his arms white so it looks like he's a long sleeve shirt. Nah, I don't have time.
He's Norwegian.
But no,
Norwegians do that.
Actually, that was my son. He lives in Minnesota and he's always wearing shorts and a t-shirt year round.
Harry, don't they say type for everything?
Is it going on your layout?
It's HO, so no.
Okay.
I have an N scale layout. It's not going to fit, but it's sitting there proudly on the shelf over here. All right, I'm going to give it back to Dan now, and you can jump into your clinic just about roofs, right?
Okay, very good. I will try to. I know. Originally, I think this clinic was supposed to be like 15 minutes, which I will try to stay within because we're a little bit over time, and it's better to quit and people wish you had gone on than to go on and wish you had quit. So I'm going to screen share and talk a little bit about roofs. All right, everybody can see that, I'm assuming?
Yep.
One of the things in model railroading, especially that I think sometimes doesn't get as much attention as perhaps it ought to, is that we see roofs in ways that you don't typically see them in real life, because we're all living down on the street level here, like this little guy. We're looking up. If it happens to be something like a barn, we can see the roof because it goes over. But if it's a flat roof building, we don't even know what's up there. We just, unless you happen to be in a larger building and look down out of a window. So basically, as model railroaders, we are like this. We are Gullivers in a land of Lilliputians. And so we see all the roofing stuff. So that's why I wanted to do a little short clinic on roofs. Of course, there's a number of kinds of roofing types. But one of the things that I think is important, especially for modeling, is to create the rafter ends of roofs, particularly on buildings that are wooden buildings. That doesn't mean you have to have full rafters. They don't have to go all the way through because you can't see the inside of the building anyway, but you can create rafter ends. And so this is this building turned upside down so you can see the rafter ends that are glued into the edge there. And it does make a good visual impact. Here we have actually an overhang on this little gas station. So I went ahead and put in the full rafters. So they can be stained or painted as you wish. Then there's a little technique for sway-backed roofs. If you're going to build a building and you want a sway-backed, instead of a straight ridge line, a sway-backed ridge line, you can build your building, and once you get the gables installed, then you put a ridge board in. It needs to be probably wood. Let the glue set, make sure it's nice and secure. And then you can glue a vertical piece on the ridge board, and then with your hand, just pull it down to create the sway and tape it down so it holds its place. And then you can go ahead and put the roof on. And then you put your sub roof on and your shingles, whatever, and you're going to end up with a nice sway-backed roof like this one. This kind of a little barn is basically up off the ground in order to keep deer and antelope out of the hay. So it is not down at the bottom. All that's open, but you can create this kind of sway-backed roof with that technique. All kinds of different materials can be used for shingling, but the ones that I typically use are going to be either Campbell's shingles, which I think pretty much everybody uses at some point or another. Papercrete used to make very nice wooden shingles. In fact, that previous slide, incidentally, these are Paper Creek shingles, which look like wood shingles. So in N scale, of course, the shingles are twice the size they're supposed to be. So what I do is I cut extra slits in the Campbell shingles so that they don't look oversized. You can actually use gummed adhesive tape and make your own shingles. Cut your own slots if you want. And I've done that in a number of buildings as well. So these are Campbell shingles. They've had extra slits cut in them. I do recommend using a subroof with registration lines. If you buy a package of Campbell's rolled roofing strips, they come with cardboard subroofs that are lined. You don't have to use those, but even if you don't use those, I do recommend drawing horizontal lines on the subroof so that your roofing is even. Otherwise, it kind of ends up looking like it was all these shingles were put on by some drunken sailor that wasn't quite over the weekend yet. So anyway, you can peel up a few shingles here and there if you want to make it look like there's some loose ones. Another technique that I've used is to cut every other or so little pieces out of the shingling strips so that you get staggered butt shingles. And that makes a very interesting kind of roof, a variation from just the normal shingled roof. But all those little cuts in there can be done easily with a razor knife. Makes a nice looking roof. In finish, I generally stain shingles rather than paint them. Paint is thick enough that it loses some of the, or hides some of the texture of the roof. So I generally stain them and then dry brush over the top with, I still use polyscale stuff, even though they don't make it anymore. Back a few years ago when I heard polyscale was going out of business, I went down to the hobby shop and I said, what do you have left in polyscale? Well, we still have all the stuff, but they're not going to be here long. I said, good, I'm going to go through and I'm going to buy 2 or 3 bottles of my favorite colors. So I have some to last me a while. I actually still have some of those, still haven't opened it yet. So I'm still using polyscale, but you can find other kinds of manufacturers of acrylic paints and so on. I generally use alcohol as a solvent rather than water because alcohol does not bead up on surfaces in the way that water does. So you can make wet water with a couple drops of detergent or something in it. But for me, alcohol does the job and it does it better. And I do a lot of what I would call wet in wet kinds of techniques. Wet in wet means that you actually add a second color into the first color while the first color is still wet. And so the second color bleeds into the first color, and it gives you a nice transition between colors. So usually stains like these stains that come down from chimneys or pipes, mostly I'm going to do that by laying a base color, and while it's still wet, put the darker color into that base color and let it bleed into that solvent. You can do different kinds of shingling shapes. And if you go to a craft store, especially one that caters to people that do scrapbooking, something like that. I don't know what you have in San Diego. Out here, Joanne Fabrics is a major chain, and I would suppose they might have them in San Diego as well. But you can get these scrapbooking scissors, which have blades that will create these little different kinds of strips. And you can make shingles out of those. This is a mill, and the prototype mill did in fact have these scalloped looking shingles or shell shaped shingles. And those are pretty easily created out of gummed paper or some other kind of paper that you want to glue on. And it's a bit of a task, but it has a nice visual reward at the end. Tar paper, of course, is standard on a lot of industrial kinds of buildings. Once I get the tar paper on, I actually will paint the tar paper, and then I will dry brush the tar paper to give some relief to the edges, so those are more easily noticed. And generally, tar paper comes in black, green, sometimes a brick kind of red color, and so on. So I've got a lot of buildings with tar paper kind of roofs. Here's one that's black, but again, dry brushed fairly heavily, so you can actually see the tar paper strips on the roof. Not too much to say about that, other than someone asked earlier about weathering powders. I use usually Bragdon's or Carr's. Now, Carr's is a British company, and I ran into them in a hobby shop in Liverpool. I think you can get Carr's on the internet, however, but Carr's is a little different in that it has some kind of an additive that makes it stick a little better, in my opinion at least, than Bragdon's. Bragdon's is probably more familiar to American modelers, but I would recommend at least you might explore the possibility of using Carr's as a weathering powder sometime. And of course, you can do tar paper, of course. This is a tar paper building, kind of the bottom of the line structure. And usually with tar paper, because it's subject to wind damage pretty easily, they nail these strips, these lath strips on the tar paper, and it makes a very interesting kind of looking building. I did the whole building as tar paper, but you can just do roofs if you want to. And you can have a few places where the tar paper's peeled up so you can see the subroofing underneath it. Corrugated metal, of course, to simulate what we used to call tin roofs, although I guess technically they're not tin. But in any case, Campbell's makes a product for that that's HO scale. But in N scale, there is also a product that is made that is actually a finer corrugation. And those make a really nice N scale kind of roof. So they're basically foil. You can actually make it out of kitchen foil. I often do that. I often take a sheet of kitchen foil, cut my little corrugated sheets, and then put them on a mill file, and then run my thumb across the foil, and it will take the impressions of the mill file, and lo and behold, you've got corrugated siding. This is Campbell's. This is a little oversized for N scale, but I'm not sure that visually it makes too much difference. It's pretty close anyway. I left a few sheets blown off in the wind so you can actually see what's inside this covered bridge. It's a shame to build all that stuff inside and not be able to see it, so you got to give a little window. These are the N scale size corrugated sheets. So they are more to scale, at least for N scale, than Campbell's are. And I often like to dip them in ferric chloride, which is a kind of acid etching solution. Used to be able to get it at Radio Shack when people were etching their own circuit boards. I haven't been to Radio Shack recently, so I'm not actually sure if they still have it, but Archer's was a major manufacturer and you get a bottle of etchant. But be sure you understand this stuff is extremely corrosive. So you need to use rubber gloves and eye protection and so on if you're going to do this. But basically you take the little piece of foil and you dip it and hold it with tweezers in the etchant until it starts to fizz. Once it starts to fizz, you have about 2 to maybe 4 seconds to get it into water to stop the chemical reaction. Otherwise, it's just going to vanish and it is no more. You can't get it back. But if you do it just 2 or 3 seconds, it gives a very nice etch to this, and then you can put weathering powder into that etch. In fact, this little building down at the bottom, I first etched it, but then I used chalk weathering powders into that etch, and it makes a really nice corrugated roof that looks like it's been there for about 40 years or something like that.
Remind people to use a plastic tweezers.
Yeah, that's a good idea. If you don't use plastic tweezers, if you use your normal tweezers, the etch will begin working on them as well. So plastic tweezer in order. That's a good thought, Roger. Thank you. Yeah. Also, I discovered that if you put baking powder or baking soda into the etch, you can get a really interesting looking weathered sheet metal roof. And that's what all of this is done with. It's done with etch, but it's done with some baking powder or baking soda added to the etching solution. You can, of course, make corrugated metal out of easily out of styrene as well. And this is a kit, by the way, but I find that you need to use your scriber and score the vertical lines. This is a kit, and it's a very nice kit, but there are no vertical lines in the siding. And so I scored the vertical lines and then went through with the wet on wet technique to put some rust into those areas where the scoring was. So once you get done with that, then it's a much more convincing looking kind of corrugated siding. In Southern California, you probably have a lot of buildings that have clay tile roofing. I have a few in Montana because they actually built some stations and they use clay tile roofing. So I just used the corrugated plastic sheets, but then scored the horizontal lines in the plastic sheets, and they make a pretty decent representation of clay tile roofing. I use just a styrene rod to create the ridge at the top. So you bring the two sides up and together, and then use that rod at the top. So that makes it finishes off very well. When you're doing roofs, of course, you need to get the water off the roof. So don't forget to put downspouts. So there's a couple of examples of, you can't really see these. They have collection boxes at the top and then downspouts. And another thing, if you want to use downspouts that are sectional, which many of them are, especially on a building that's more than one story, I take the insulation off of wire that's the right diameter, cut them in little sections, and then just slip them over the rod, and then it creates section joints, as you would often see in downspouts like that. All kinds of stuff on the top of roofs. One of the nice things about living in the suburb of Detroit is occasionally I'll be downtown and I will be in a building that's 40, 50 stories high. But since Detroit is a very old city, it has a lot of very old buildings. And as you look down on the rooftops of these old buildings, you would be absolutely amazed at the amount of junk that collects on rooftops. And it makes really nice modeling material. So sometimes they are things like these big air conditioning units for a cold storage place. Those would be natural to the function of the building, but often what you find on the top of buildings are anything from cranes to old lumber to buckets, almost anything you can think of. Often you have a roof structure with an access to the roof. So this one obviously is a stairwell that you get up to the roof to. Sometimes they will have elevators. And of course, you can use fire escapes as well. But if you're going to have stuff on a roof, they're not going to carry a barrel up a fire escape. It's going to have some kind of a device to get it up there. And it's a good place also for these kind of clear story windows up at the top. Those make nice modeling things.
Clear story.
Here's some more. This one obviously is more like an elevator. So it's got a bigger door over here and a brick structure on the top, but a lot of junk, pallets and old lumber and stuff up there. Even sloped roofs can have some interesting structures. This is a a hide and fur installation facility in Lewistown where they basically deal in cow hides, but they use chemicals. And so there's a couple of tanks for chemicals and then a wooden structure with a ladder up to get to them, which is on a sloped roof. That makes a nice kind of detail, a little different than the ordinary kind of thing. So that's basically it. I try to keep this one short, 15 minutes. I think I'm a little over, maybe 18 minutes, but I do want to say how much I've enjoyed being with you. And it's been a delight to see some of your Christmas projects. And so maybe one of these days I'll get back to San Diego and see a few more of your layouts. So I'm going to turn it back to you, Ryan. I'll do a stop share and it's back to your corner.
Well, that about covers it.
Thank you very much.
Boy, that was fantastic.
Yeah.
It was great, Dan. Absolutely great.